For the next 3 days, it's Battleground Montreal. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
All the news you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
It's the home of the Habs, Youppi. Great smoked meat and bagels. For the next 3 days, Montreal is also the home base of all the political parties in the election campaign. They're all getting ready for the debates. But it is news out of Japan that is shaking up the election campaign today. The Japanese news outlet Nikkei is reporting that Honda is considering moving vehicle production out of Canada and Mexico and to the United States because of the Trump tariffs. According to the news report, Honda could move production of the CR-V from Canada to the United States. The CR-V is made in Alliston, Ontario. More than 4,000 people work at that plant in Alliston. Just yesterday, U.S. President Donald Trump said he was thinking about giving the auto sector a pause on tariffs while the automakers sort out their supply chains.
I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies where they're switching to parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places, and they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here. But they need a little bit of time. So I'm talking about things like that.
In response to the Japanese news report about Honda, the Canadian government says it will help domestically based automakers by waiving some of the countermeasures it has imposed on U.S. imports. That announcement came from the current Minister of Finance, Francois-Philippe Champagne. His statement says companies will be required to make efforts to maintain jobs and sustain business activities in Canada. Now, on the hustings today in Montreal, the Liberal leader Mark Carney began his remarks by once more talking about the Trump threat.
President Trump is trying to fundamentally restructure the international trading system. In the process, he's rupturing the global economy. And that 80-year period when the United States embraced the mantle of global economic leadership, when it forged alliances rooted in trust and mutual respect, and championed the free and open exchange of goods and services and ideas, is over. There is no going back. We, in Canada, we will have to build a new relationship with the United States. And Canada can help redesign the global trading system with like-minded countries.
Carney made the remarks in St. Eustache at the Nova Bus headquarters. That's a maker of buses for public transit systems. It's owned by Volvo. When asked for his reaction to the news report about Honda potentially moving production out of Canada, Carney said Canada's auto sector is under attack by the U.S. president.
The North American automobile sector is the most integrated industrial manufacturing sector in the world, particularly the Canadian-U.S. Auto sector. And so President Trump's tariffs are an attempt in some degree to pull apart that integration and the benefits that come from that integration, benefits to the United States, benefits to Canada, benefits to Mexico. And we are seeing some of the impacts in the short term of that with layoffs for some of our automakers, potential shifts in production if this situation remains. Huge increase in costs ultimately to American consumers, obviously to Canadian consumers. Our focus is on jobs and growth here in Canada.
The Conservative campaign's Montreal stop today featured another tough on crime announcement with Pierre Poilievre promising to go after scammers who target seniors.
We're going to pass the Stop Scamming Seniors Act, a common sense law that forces banks and telecom companies to deploy state-of-the-art technology to catch scams and stop them before they happen, not after, when it is too late.
The Poilievre promise would mandate banks and other financial institutions do a better job of flagging suspicious banking activity. It also proposes mandatory minimum sentences for convicted scammers. When asked about the news report about Honda, Poilievre called Trump's targeting of Canada unfair and unjustified.
First of all, President Trump deserves nothing but condemnation for the unfair targeting of Canada. While he's lifting tariffs and backing down on tariffs all around the world, he continues to tariff our auto sector. There's nobody who's going to be able to control President Trump, as Mr. Carney is learning, despite his promises. What we should do is focus on what we can control, and that is to reverse the disastrous liberal economic policies that Mr. Carney advised Trudeau to take, that have driven up taxes, blocked our resources, wrapped our businesses in red tape, and driven $500 billion south. We need change. We can't afford a fourth Liberal term. We need change to axe taxes, cut red tape, approve resource projects, make this the best place in the world to do business.
The NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh, also in Montreal, made an announcement about what he calls tax fairness, promising once more to change the tax code about capital gains.
The way capital gains works right now is if you are working hard, you're a nurse, a teacher, an electrician, a plumber, you work hard, your entire salary is taxable. But if you sit at home and sell shares, only half of the money you make is taxable. So if you're sitting at home and selling shares and make $200,000 a year, only $100,000 of that is taxable. The other is tax-free. That's unfair. That's inherently unfair.
On the potential of Honda leaving Canada, Mr. Singh called it deeply concerning.
This is potentially going to impact thousands of jobs in Canada and have a devastating impact on the automobile sector for the long term. And so it really highlights how we need to really fight back and get these tariffs removed, make sure that we can strengthen our automobile sector. We know that many sectors are being impacted, not just the automobile sector. Here in Quebec, people are still feeling the impacts because of the steel and aluminum tariffs. So it really highlights how important it is for us to fight back and for us to take care of those workers.
So the debates are set for tomorrow and Thursday. Tomorrow in French, Thursday in English. Start time for both, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
He joins us every Tuesday, so let's jump right into things now with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Great to hear from you again today.
My pleasure.
Let's get into the newest news first. What do you think about the news report from the Nikkei news service out of Japan that Honda is considering switching some car production from Mexico and Canada to the United States? It could impact the CRV plant in Alliston, Ontario. What do you think about that?
Well, first off, the Japanese are not involved in this election, so I don't believe there's anything to do with the election. They're just reporting what's going on. So I accept it as accurate. They're very plugged in, obviously, in Japan, where Honda World Headquarters is located. I find it fascinating, sadly, tragically, for all of us. I think that what Honda is doing is they've taken their measure, like any business, large organization does. I've been teaching this for years in class, of where do we locate our plants? Should we locate it in country A or B or C or D? And then there's a huge body of consulting work and research on how you choose which country to go to, looking at the GDP of the country and the regulations and the laws and blah, blah, blah. And so what I think is happening here is that the Honda has looked at it, and they've watched since Trump got elected. They watched what Trump was proposing, and then they watched, more importantly, the reaction of the government of Canada and the government of Ontario. And as you know, I've been very critical of both governments because for the first 60 days, they were, endless insults and attacks on the United States and insults towards Donald Trump. And I was arguing you should be working very quietly behind the scenes, assiduously, to come up with a new deal to try to exempt us from the impact of the tariffs. And they waited till now. And I think what this is a tacit, unspoken condemnation of the government in Ottawa and the government in Toronto, the Ontario government, because what they're saying is these people, these two governments, are not going to save the auto industry. That's what they're saying. Now, they don't use those words. By saying we're going to go to the States is why. Because you don't believe that the two governments that are the most critical, the federal government and the Ontario government, are going to do the deal, are going to be able to save the auto industry. And yes, I do blame the Prime Minister. I do blame Premier Ford because The buck stops at the top, as Harry Truman taught us. The Prime Minister, the buck stops with the Prime Minister of Canada. The buck stops with the Premier of Ontario, the largest province in Canada, GDP, and where the auto industry is located. And this decision is saying we don't believe, we don't have confidence, whatever words you want to use, that the Canadian and Ontario governments are going to save the day. And so, yes, I do believe that they're going to be moving, and Premier Ford can, and he's already dancing and spinning and prevaricating.
Well, he says it's not true.
They're not really moving. They're going to do new production there. These are excuses because he and Carney are both said, we will save Canada. We will save us from Trump. And they are failing us. They're not saving us. Both governments are failing us catastrophically.
Would you expect, I mean, you have Honda in Allison, Toyota in Cambridge, Ford in Oakville, Stellantis in Windsor, I guess, right? General Motors as well. Would you expect more announcements like this from the other?
Yes, I do. I don't think the rest will come until after the election. But, the writing is on the wall now. I mean, let's be very clear so everybody understands, because I've worked in large corporations. A bank is a large corporation. These organizations are not partisans. They're not politicians. They make hard-nosed, calculating macroeconomic, microeconomic, financial decisions based on hard data. They're not doing this to spin like politicians like Premier Ford is doing right now, and as the Liberals will absolutely guaranteed be doing by the end of today. That's not how they work. They look at it, and they're very cold-blooded about it, and they look at all the data, all the variables, all the facts, and they're looking at both the U.S. side and they're looking at the Canadian side and saying, does it make sense for us to stay here? And that announcement, I think, will be the first of a series. I think Toyota or GM or Ford, I don't know which order, but these companies will one by one, drip by drip, do something similar in the days and weeks and months ahead. And they will do it because I'm not trying to say that, people are going to say, you're not blaming Trump. Of course Trump announced the tariffs. Of course Trump precipitated the crisis. But the buck stops with the Prime Minister and the Premier. It's their job. That's why we pay them the prestige and the big bucks of being the leader, to work behind the scenes assiduously, which they failed catastrophically to do from day one because they were too busy at the microphones attacking and insulting the United States. And lately, Premier Ford was too busy trying to micromanage the federal Poilievre campaign and let his ego get involved in, who's got the better campaign manager. When this was going on, I thought, who's minding the store? Who's minding the store?
Okay.
And the answer was Carney was not minding the store, and neither was Premier Ford. And for those who say this is partisan, one's a Liberal government, one's a Conservative government, and they have both failed the Canadian people.
Okay, we'll stop here, and if you have any added remarks to make about that, would like to hear them from you. And, we could talk about the economy. It was sure to come up in the debates tomorrow and on Thursday. Like your thoughts on that as well. Professor Ian Lee is with us from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now You Know with Rob Snow
Returns on News Radio.
Back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Anything you wanted to add there on the Honda news?
Well, I hope, dear God, I hope for the good of our country, and I mean this very seriously. I hope that this becomes the issue on Thursday night at the debates, because both parties, I'm talking the federal Liberals and the provincial Conservatives, have both said over and over, we are going to save Canada from Donald Trump. And what this record is going to is showing, it's not my opinion, Honda is leaving. What this is showing
they're considering
is that they are not saving Canada, they are failing Canada.
Okay.
And surely some journalists, I hope that Steve Paikin asked this question. I hope that Poilievre brings it up, because we have to deal with reality, not political spin from Premier Ford about who's got a better campaign manager.
Let me ask you, Professor, just on Trump and tariffs, where's the daylight between Poilievre and Carney on this issue? They both say it's unfair and unjustified. They both say we need to retaliate. They both say we need to build a more resilient economy. They both say they want to break down interprovincial trade barriers, which is like an evergreen thing. They both say they want to reduce approval times for, mega projects. Carney talks about energy corridors. Poilievre talks about LNG and pipelines. They both say they want to expand trade to other countries. Like, where are the differences here?
No, it's a very fair question. I mean, it's the same sort of thing I'm dealing with in my strategy class all the time with my students. You got relatively balanced companies. I'm drawing an analogy here to competitive companies. And so you got companies that are roughly equally balanced, or if you want, my favorite, NFL football. And, you got two equally balanced teams that come up against each other. How do you separate the two in your mind analytically? And I've long argued, well, you got to look at their recent historical track record. What else have you got to go on if they're both roughly equivalent in successes, in outcome, etc.? And so I look at the track record of the Conservatives have been in power for 10 years, so it's a little harder. You can't look at their track record. Federal Conservatives haven't been there. And but you can look at the Liberal record on these specific issues, such as resource development, such as pipelines, such as LNG exports, and what's fascinating is that what Carney's promising is the antithesis of what the Liberal government did for the last 9 years. So I'm sort of giving me a bit of whiplash here. I'm saying everything he's saying is the antithesis and the opposite of what the Liberals have promoted very aggressively up until literally December. I mean, Guilbeault was saying this, and so was Wilkinson, who are both in the Carney cabinet.
And they're still there.
So I'm just looking at the facts, and these are facts.
Okay. What else would you like to hear from the leaders when it comes to economic issues in the debates? Very quickly, like 2 minutes.
I'm so disappointed that we haven't heard a lot more about the negotiations that are inevitable with the Americans. We haven't had an honest conversation from any of the political parties about the fact that we're going to have to open up and give things up. We're going to have to. They haven't talked at all about the how we're going to fund the huge increase in defense needed to get to 2 or 2.5 or 3% of defense spending, a percentage of GDP. They haven't talked about whether we're going to open up our protected industries, which the Americans are demanding. I mean, all three parties are wedded to supply management, and Donald Trump, without any doubt, I think, has that at the top of his hit list. So how can we possibly have a deal if all the parties are saying
it's
no way will we end supply management, and Trump is clearly insisting on it? Are we really going to hold Canada up to ransom for 8,500 dairy farmers? And I'm not trashing dairy farmers. They're wonderful people. They're hardworking people. But does it make sense to hold up the future of the country of 40 million people for 8,000 people that you could easily pay off, just like the Australians did, just like the New Zealanders did? They literally compensated the farmers generously, I will point out, and they should have, and they did.
Okay.
But we're not even
and Canada's been doing that as it is.
What do we have to give
open up the market
to get a deal? Because we must have a deal with the largest economy in the world.
Okay. Wrap it up there for this week. Wow. Kind of rapid fire discussion today. Thank you so much. Great to hear from you.
Very much.
We'll speak next week. Bye-bye. Yeah, that's Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. The Newsday panel just ahead. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio. The Newsday panel.
Well, it's another all-island edition of the Newsday panel again today. Jordan Paquette, Vice President at Blue Sky Strategy Group, with us. How are you, Jordan?
Great, Rob. How you doing?
That's good. I'm good. Yeah, thank you. Nick McRoberts back from Hill and Knowlton. How are you, Nick?
Doing good, Rob. How are you?
That's good. So Summerside versus Charlottetown again today. Let's jump right into it here.
Go.
Let's go. So a news story in the middle of an election campaign, a news story drops like this. Honda considering leaving Canada. Alliston, Ontario, a plant that employs 4,200 people. How does that impact the election campaign, Jordan Paquette?
Yeah, look, any big economic news like this certainly brings up a lot of attention, especially in the regions where these workers are affected. I think people have noticed that the reports are unconfirmed yet, but I mean, I think this is something that the sector has feared, given that the Trump administration's stated goal has been to move production to the U.S. So that seems to be obviously what they're trying to do, and it's obviously not good news for Canada. So in reality, it's tough to see how again leaders are going to put forward these policies to build back economic resiliency here, because once those jobs leave, they're really not going to be coming back.
Nick, what do you think, Nick?
Well, I think it points to needing to understand the root cause of this, right? And the root cause of this is Donald Trump.
Okay.
So what it reinforces is the fact that issue is not going away. And it's still very much top of mind for Canadians. It's especially top of mind for those impacted workers. And it remains that our economic and job prospects in this country are going to be impacted by decisions made south of the border at the outset.
But does one side, look, if it's true, it's terrible news for Allison. I'm not understating that. But we're less than 2 weeks away from voting day in this country. Mm-hmm. I want to know, because of a story like this, does one side potentially gain an advantage over the other side in terms of either policies that have been proposed or reassurances that can be offered, that they have a plan to deal with this kind of economic chaos that is happening, that is beyond our control, seemingly? What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, so as I was saying, look, I think affordability is still an issue that's top of mind for Canadians. Obviously, these job losses certainly affect Allison, Ontario, and can affect it in a very bad way if it goes forward. So I think to that sense, it allows the Liberals to perhaps say once again, oh, look, it is Donald Trump's affecting us, so vote for us, we can deal with it. In reality, He's not going to be able to deal with that. Nobody is. It's going to be, and that's why we have to pull back the focus on how do we shift to a broader economic advantage in Canada.
Okay, so more big picture, you think? Okay,
right,
what do you think, Nick?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think, Nick? What do you think?
I think to push on Jordan a little bit, it's fair to say that no one's going to be able to deal with Donald Trump, but someone's going to have to. This does not go away. And Mark Carney has the advantage of being the prime minister during this, and he's the one that will respond, and they have responded. And the policies that he's put out so far, directly speak to the challenges that auto workers are facing, or that other impacted industries like steel, aluminum, or agriculture industries will feel from Donald Trump. So it's not a question of no one's going to be able to deal with him. It truly is who can best deal with him. I think the Liberals have put the best plan in place to date.
Okay, all right. Let's. Sorry, Jordan, if you wanted to.
Oh, sure. No, I was just going to say, I mean, look, once those jobs go to the U.S., if they do, it's very unfortunate, but it's not like Mark Carney's going to call Donald Trump and say, hi, I know your stated effect of having your tariff policies to bring manufacturing back home. Sorry, I'll let you keep those jobs, though, just because we'll make a good deal with you. That's not going to happen. This is Trump's stated goal. It's about building more resilient economy in Canada and putting those two plans forward.
Okay. Let's play the clip of Doug Ford yesterday. If my campaign manager was running the show, the Conservatives wouldn't be where they are. Play that clip, David. Premier
As
Ford.
For Corey, I've said right from day one, he's tough as nails, but he's the best campaign manager in the country. And to be very frank, if Corey was running that campaign, I don't think Mr. Poilievre would be in the position he's in right now. But it's still a lot of time left. We still have debates. At the end of the day, the people will decide which way they want this country to move forward. But sometimes the truth hurts.
What's going on there, Jordan? Why is he saying that?
Well, look, it's very clear that there's some element of an ulterior motive happening.
Hostility?
Now. Every day, not even just that. Every time the Liberals find themselves on their back in this campaign, and this most recent example was Buttongate, either tonight or Ford has come out and said something. So there's definitely something now at this point. First 2 times, okay, whatever. It's a little suspicious. Third time, something's going on. I kind of tend to agree with the premier that perhaps the party were in a different situation. They probably would have been in a worse situation. Let's not forget that Doug Ford and Corey Teneycke won 3 of the absolute probably easiest elections in Canadian history, especially in Ontario history.
Well,
they
certainly
were up
the
against,
first and the third. The first and the third, for sure. Yeah.
And I would say the second one as well. They were up against a fractured Liberal Party with a weak leader as well. I think walking into that after COVID, after those things, it was a pretty big cakewalk for them as well.
Okay, I'm going to stop here, Nick. But I'll give you lots of time when we come back. I want to dig a little deeper into why is the Premier of Ontario basically pulling out the old PC Party of Ontario campaign bus and driving over Pierre Poilievre. What is going on here? Jordan McKenna is with us today, Vice President of Blue Sky Strategy Group, and Nick McRoberts from Hill and Knowlton for our Newsday panel. Let's play the clip of Doug Ford again, Dave.
For Corey, I've said right from day one, he's tough as nails, but he's the best campaign manager in the country. And to be very frank, if Corey was running that campaign, I don't think Mr. Poilievre would be in the position he's in right now. But it's still a lot of time left. We still have debates. At the end of the day, the people will decide which way they want this country to move forward. But sometimes the truth hurts.
Sometimes the truth hurts. If Corey Teneycke was running this campaign, it wouldn't be in the ditch, according to Doug Ford. What do you think that's all about, Nick?
I think that every political party deals with factions, right, and different opinions on direction. And I'm not, going to sit on your show, Rob, and say that the Liberal Party is different than that. But what is at play here, I think, is some egos, right? Some egos from Doug Ford, some egos from, some campaign managers within conservative circles. Yeah. And to your point, the numbers have tanked. I talk about division within political parties. Nothing united the Liberal Party in recent months more than a good leadership contest and a rallying victory around Mark Carney. So I welcome the Conservatives having another unifying leadership contest to bring everyone together. I think that's what's best for them right now.
Okay. Jordan, I do want to run this by you. I mean, there is this kind of line of thinking out there that people like Corey Teneycke, they're laying the groundwork for a Poilievre loss in this election, like a leadership review. Knives will be out for Poilievre. They're going to toss him to the curb. And who's waiting in the wings but Captain Canada, proven winner from Ontario, is Doug Ford as the new Conservative Party leader. I would say, if I could just insert my own opinion, if Doug Ford thinks helping re-elect the Liberals to a 4th term is a way to win over Conservatives, I don't know if that's a winning proposition. That's my own opinion. But what do you think of this idea? Doug Ford as leader of the federal Conservative Party and maybe even someday prime minister. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it will never happen. The very last, the highest office that Doug Ford is going to hold as a quote unquote conservative is the one he currently holds now. He has in effect tanked any chance of any future in the Conservative Party of Canada. Look, the base of the Conservative Party is very completely solidly behind Pierre. He has expanded that pace to no end. I mean, hundreds of thousands of more members, even way more than the Liberals. And it's just not something that's going to happen. They have very long memories. This isn't something that they will forget either. And it's just not something. Look, if you drill down into it, you have members of Ford's cabinet, Caroline Mulroney, Stephen Lecce, that are doing great work supporting local candidates. And right down to the grassroots level as well, campaign staff, other people who support all parties. I think it's just some of these egos at the top, to what Nick mentioned, some egos at play here, and that's all it is. But if Uncle Dougie thinks he's setting himself up for something in the future, it's not happening.
Okay, I wanted to do kind of a deep dive into the Conservative and Liberal election campaign so far, but we don't have a time to do a real deep dive. So I do want to talk about Buttongate. Okay, can we talk a little bit about Buttongate? That's a gaffe. I mean, a gaffe. Maybe it's even worse than a gaffe. Look, you weren't at Darcy McGee's talking about buttons the other night, were you, Nick? You weren't. That
was
wasn't you.
not me. I can confirm it was not me.
All right. Okay. Mark Carney has reassigned them, whoever they are, the people behind Button Gate. But is that really good enough? That's what some people are wondering. Is that really good enough? What do you think about how the Liberals handled this, Nick?
I think that what Mr. Carney put across and what was clear from his remarks is this was not sanctioned by the campaign. It was not something that was a directive from the war room or from Mr. Carney. And because of that, they took action to make sure that this person was not in a position to make decisions for the campaign again. Or what they thought decisions on behalf of the campaign again. The reassigned could mean a lot of things. I don't know what this person's role initially was. It could mean that they're reassigned to, door knocking in the Pian. It could mean that they're, reassigned to something of much lower consequence. That's ultimately, as leader of the party, Mr. Carney's prerogative. I also kind of frankly think that this won't be an issue that changes ballots.
A one-day wonder, maybe a one-day wonder. Yeah, but
sure,
it does go to leadership.
It does take questions away, right? When a day yesterday where Mr. Carney wants to be out and talking about some of the good initiatives that they're going to do for Canadian military procurement, instead he's got to answer silly questions on this thing that a staffer made a mistake.
Okay. I'll disagree a little bit with Nick Jordan, because I would say Mr. Carney's answer should have been, it's wrong. He said it's wrong. It's unacceptable. And they're no longer part of my campaign. That's not what he said. Okay. That's what he should have said, in my opinion, but that's not what he said. What do you think, very quickly here?
Well, just like he should have fired Paul Chang as soon as that issue came forward. Mr. Carney's having a very difficult decision, making those tough decisions as they come up. He absolutely should have said that these individuals are no longer part of the campaign. This was an egregious error. And what's worst about it is they were reassigned. Reassigned to what? And from what? To Nick's point, like what was there, this office of voter fraud and in the Liberal war room that these people were working on, and now they're moved on to something else? Like it boggles the mind why he would have this going, and now people can continue to question it for a couple of days, and they brought in these American style tactics. So if Liberals want to start pointing fingers at Conservatives about who's more Trump-like, now they have to point the finger back at themselves. So they've really lost any upper hand they might have thought they had in this particular instance.
Okay, when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the debates and the topics for the debates in both French and English. They're not all the same, and healthcare is not even up for discussion, apparently. When we come back, this is the Newsday panel on News Radio. Here with Nick McRoberts from Hill & Knowlton, Jordan Paquette, Vice President, Blue Sky Strategy Group. Are either of you Habs fans, by the way?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. Okay, I'm not a Habs fan either. But it's interesting because if Columbus wins in regulation against the Philadelphia Flyers tonight, it gets kind of nail-biting for the Montreal Canadiens. They would have one game left, and if the Blue Jackets would have an additional game left. So the Blue Jackets would be able to get into the playoffs, like leapfrog over the Montreal Canadiens with a regulation win over the Islanders. The Habs would have to win against Carolina tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow. Tomorrow is also the French language debate for the election, right? So every hockey fan in Quebec who cheers for the Habs going to be, which would be all of them, they're all going to be watching the Habs game. So Yves-Francois Blanchette is considering, depending on the outcome, I would imagine, of this hockey game tonight, proposing that they postpone the French language debate, which they did in 2011. And all the parties agreed in 2011 because they wanted the biggest audience possible for the debates. Who knows? Depending on the outcome of a Columbus Blue Jackets Philadelphia Flyers game tonight, there might not even be a French language debate tomorrow. Crazy. Isn't that crazy?
Pretty Canadian story.
Yeah, but also, like, the debate commission should have known that was going to happen. Look, I have to ask you, okay, just a very quick comment here. healthcare is not a topic for either debate in either language. What do you guys think of that? Jordan, go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, I just think it goes to show where Canadians have been focused. I think the commission, perhaps, and their advisors kind of take a look at generally what's happening, what the parties are talking about, what Canadians are generally talking about. And you just haven't seen healthcare come up as a big issue. Certainly healthcare is in dire straits across the country. I know it is mainly a provincial issue, so perhaps that's why they're avoiding it. It's more going to be about how much money can transfer into certain provinces. So maybe that's a bit part of it. But I think the other topics they have put out there are kind of much more on top of where Canadians have been looking at during this election.
I would also say immigration will be part of the French debate, but it's not one of the topics for the English debate. But on healthcare not being a topic for either debate, what do you think of that, Nick?
Yeah, first off, go Leafs go. Second, on healthcare.
Oh my gosh.
Nick
is on the blacklist now.
I think to Jordan's point, right, it's going to be how do the leaders weave healthcare into the topics. The debate commission might have thought of that in terms of how, can it be an underlying issue? Look, I know in our home provinces of PEI, it's a real deal, and people tie it into the government. They don't necessarily tie it into provincial or federal government. It's just how can the government make my hospital stay shorter? So I think there's an opportunity here for the leaders to tie it in, right, to leading in a crisis and energy and climate and affordability and all of those things.
Very interesting. Okay. Thank you so much for the Battle of Prince Edward Island again today, Summerside versus Charlottetown. I always enjoy our discussions.
One more tidbit for Islander Day. Kate McKenna, who broke the Buttgate story, another great Islander.
Oh, okay. Right.
Indeed.
Forgot to work that in there earlier.
Isn't that something? Okay, that's very good. Very good. All right. Outsized influence from the birthplace of Confederation. I'm Rob Snow. That's our Newsday panel. Thanks to both of you. Nick McRoberts from Hill and Knowlton. Jordan Paquette from Blue Sky Strategy Group. Talkback coming up right after the news. Hot topic for you today to chew on, call in, discuss, debate, consider, ponder. It's all ahead right after the latest breaking news here on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. Today, we are asking, what's wrong with the Conservatives? That's what we want to do. We want to have a wide-ranging discussion on the Conservative Party's election campaign, whether you back the Conservative Party or not. We want to get a better idea of how this happened, how this Conservative Party went from having a 25-point lead in the polls to trailing in the polls. And perhaps, just maybe, you never know, being 2 weeks away from losing this election and losing to the Liberals for the fourth election in a row. Does anyone have any ideas why this is the case? What happened? If something went wrong, what went wrong? If you were to offer advice to people running the Conservative Party election campaign, what advice would you offer them? Or would you say, don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. The race is tighter and it's still up for grabs. Our call-in line, 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. Love to hear from some first-time callers today. Now, look, I know that a lot of you listening right now are going to vote for the Conservative Party no matter what. Maybe you don't even believe what these polls are saying. I've certainly heard that plenty of times over the last few weeks. And if the polls are wrong, and 2 weeks from yesterday, the Conservatives come out the winners, there won't be enough crow in Canada for the pollsters to eat. But it would appear that a Liberal Party that was down and out, that was sucking wind, that was headed for certain defeat, may very well be on the cusp of one of the greatest political comebacks in the history of Canada, if not the greatest political comeback in the history of Canada. And if that is indeed what is about to unfold over the next couple of weeks, we want to know, in the here and now, why you think that is the case. We don't care if you support the Conservatives or support the Liberals or support the New Democrats or the Greens or the People's Party, any of them. We like to hear all sides on this show. We welcome all opinions during Talkback. If you only talk to people you agree with all the time, the conversations get pretty boring. Now, for example, why is it that Doug Ford, the progressive conservative premier of Ontario, decided to drive the bus right over Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives and the election campaign strategy yesterday and then back up and drive over them again just to make sure the job was done? What's going on there? That's not good for the Conservatives. If the Conservatives are to have any hope of pulling off a victory on election night, reality dictates it needs to win. The Conservative Party needs to win everywhere Doug Ford just won in the Ontario election. And you have the Premier of Ontario coming out, speaking to news reporters at the Ontario legislature saying, hey, if my people were running the election campaign, the Conservatives would be doing a lot better. And sometimes the truth hurts, to quote the Premier. Sometimes the truth hurts. What the heck is that? What do you think is going on there? Is that just Doug Ford launching truth bombs? Or, I don't know, is Doug Ford a closet liberal? Because that's a line of thinking that's out there. It's been argued that one of the reasons the federal Conservatives are losing is because of Danielle Smith and the Premier of Alberta and remarks that she has made over the course of the election campaign. Any truth to that? There was a time just a couple of weeks ago when newspaper columnists in Alberta were suggesting Danielle Smith should keep her thoughts to herself for the duration of the federal election campaign for the good of her federal cousins. Maybe you agree. Another narrative, Poilievre gives off a Trump vibe. Boasting about crowd sizes at rallies is too Trumpy. Even the slogan Canada First, too Trumpy. Sounds too much like America First. I don't know. I think maybe people may be overthinking that one. But what do you think? Another is that Poilievre maybe took too long to clue into the Trump factor, how Canadians really feel about Donald Trump, wasn't quick enough out of the gate to denounce all the things Trump was saying and doing to Canada. What do you think about that? Look, some people are saying the election campaign is far from over, 2 weeks to go, debates tomorrow and Thursday, still a horse race. But others are saying the election campaign is pretty much over. The Liberals are going to win again. And the only unknown at this stage of the game is by how much the Liberals will win. That the margin of victory is the only uncertainty right now. So if that's the case, and the Liberals are going to win, and the Conservatives have blown a 25-point lead, why is that the case? 1-833-668-2577 is our call-in line. If you've never called before, mention that to our call screener. We'll make your call a priority. 1-833-668-2577. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback on a Tuesday. Join the discussion. It could be a busy one today, and we'd love to hear from you. 1-833-668-2577. What went wrong? What did they do wrong? Jody in Calgary. Hello, Jody.
Oh, hey, Rob.
Hi, Jody. Yeah, I'm good, Jody. What do you think is going on here?
First of all, I say, please go Habs. Please make the playoffs. Anyway,
okay.
my blood pressure went up big time last night. But
okay.
First of all, I think the polls are right.
Okay.
And the reason why is because Trudeau's gone.
Yeah.
And the second reason why is people on the NDP side, they realize that Jagmeet Singh is basically a clown. So a lot of the NDPs are voting for Liberal. And third of all, I think that Carney's he's putting an image out there that he's not really to the left; he's more to the center.
Right. Okay.
So I think the polls are right to a certain extent.
All right. Thank you, Jody. Yeah, I'll have an update on the whole Habs/French language debate situation, but that'll have to wait until after the news. Some funny things are starting to materialize there. Classic Canadian situation. Steve up next. Hi, Steve. Hello, Steve.
Rob. You hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you just fine. What do you think happened to the once big Conservative lead? What happened to that lead?
Well, I'm a first-time caller, and I'm not super educated in politics. This is the first time I've actually taken a real kind of liking.
Well, you're paying attention now, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to. There's a lot of information to take in.
Yes.
But I think one of your earlier callers, and you hit like the nail on the head, is that the conservatives aren't as unified as the liberals. Like there's a lot of like infighting between like Danielle Smith and Ford and Pierre. So I think the reason why, like, and I agree with the last caller too, Jody, there saying that the polls are accurately reflected because of the fact that they're not unified. They're
not putting up a united front. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay. You think these comments from Doug Ford really hurt the conservatives?
I'll be honest with you. I don't think it hurt them that much, but I think it definitely does show that there's definitely some conversations that need to be happening behind closed doors before they start running their mouths out in public.
Right. Okay. Very, very interesting. Now, one of the callers had mentioned, well, Carney came along. He took a lot of ideas from the conservatives. Do you think that would have anything to do with it? Axe the tax. Carney axed the tax. You know, you're saving money on gas in Alberta today because of that.
That's true. Yeah. Like I said, it's a lot of information for me, so I'm not super educated on the topic. I'm still trying to kind of filter through everything. My only moments are the little key times that I get to hear your show. So thank you again for
my pleasure. I really thank you for calling. But you think one of the big things is that they're not putting up like a united front, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest
infighting going
takeaway on. in my opinion, just based off the last couple of weeks.
Fair comment, sir. Thank you so much for calling and being a first-time caller today, Steve. Good to hear from you. A couple of lines available there. We will stop here, though, for the latest breaking news. Lots to bring you up to date on today in the news business. We'll do that. And then right back to your phone calls, 1-833-668-2577 on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
And I am here with David Smith, as we're always together here on Now You Know with Rob Snow. It's Talkback. I'm starting to think, David, maybe we should say the French language debate is tentatively scheduled for tomorrow. Okay. This is starting to take off as a story today. There's a big write-up about it in the Montreal Gazette. And look, the debate commission was warned about this when the dates were first released for the debates, that it maybe is not wise to schedule the French language debate on the same night as the final game for the Habs for the regular season for the Montreal Canadiens, because like right now they hold the second wild card spot in the East right now, but they have yet to clinch. They really have to win tomorrow night. So there's already talk. And I mean, if Columbus, who's right behind them, who has a game in hand, they have 2 games left, wins tonight against Philadelphia, then it's really nail-biting time for the Montreal Canadiens. It'll be really close. It'll come down to the final game of the season for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So there are calls now from the political parties, 2 of them, to delay the French language debate. Yves-François, I am not kidding you, Yves-François Blanchet did this at his news event in Montreal today, was asked about this. They apparently did this in 2011 during the leaders' debates in 2011. There was a Habs game on. They delayed the French language debate. Let's listen to this. This is Mr. Blanchet today.
I would like anybody else, to watch the game. I would like yesterday's game to be a win for the Canadians because the young Russian was on ice. He scored. Then we would have been done with this season, and then the playoff would have begun. And we will have time to watch it because in May we will be free. But now I believe that some questions are very serious about Canada's future and Quebec's future, and maybe some attention should be given to the debate. If the date can be changed, let's do that. I will, of course, make myself available at any moment. We'll look into that.
The debate should not clash with the hockey game tomorrow night. NDP out with a statement within the last half hour, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is calling on organizers to reconsider the timing of the upcoming French language leaders debate. The debate falls on the same night the Montreal Canadiens will be playing their final game of the regular season and their third and final chance to clinch a playoff spot, with voters caught between a high-stakes hockey game and a critical political debate. Singh is urging organizers to rethink the timing so Canadians don't have to choose between democratic engagement and national pride. We're asking people, especially in Quebec, to choose between a critical democratic debate and cheering on the Habs in a must-win game, said Singh. This kind of political discussion shouldn't compete with something that means so much to so many. Now, Dave, kind of strategize this a little bit further, because we have not heard anything from the Conservatives. I think the Conservatives would be fine. You want to delay it a day? Let's delay it a day. If you're Mark Carney and the Liberals, you know French is not your strong suit. You know you're going to be in the lion's den there in Montreal. Would you not want the smallest possible audience witnessing your debate performance?
Possibly.
Tomorrow night?
Possibly, but then also, it would
Or
give
do you want to look like a chicken?
Well, it would give them more time. It'd give them an extra day to prepare.
Maybe give them more time. But I'd rather say instead of 1 million people watching, maybe only 500,000 people watch, or maybe even fewer than that, because they're all going to be watching the Habs game instead.
I just think it's hilarious that this is the second time.
This is like it's such a quintessential Canadian thing, isn't it? All right, let's go to Mike. It's so crazy. Let's go to Mike in Alberta. Okay, the question today is actually about the Conservatives, who were once dominating in the polls, 25-point lead that has seemingly evaporated. What happened to the Conservative election campaign in the big lead? Hi, Mike.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Mike. Yeah, great to hear from you. Sorry for I just wanted to get that out there. That's so interesting. But thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's I think the politicians all need to figure out if they're human or a human being.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
I think it's just down like the states. Camilla was in the lead, they said, and stuff like that, and then it's the biggest turnout they've ever had.
Okay.
And I think people are hoping that the Conservatives can change things. We've had 9 years with these guys, and as much as they say the policies are going to change and stuff, have they?
Okay. But you think when it comes to actually getting, what they call GOTV, get out the vote, that that will help the Conservatives? The mobilization stage of the campaign could really help the Conservatives.
Well, I really don't think they're hurting. I think
you don't think they're hurting. Okay. Well, again, they're anywhere from the mid to high 30s. There's a poll out today that has them at 43%, but only one poll.
But that's what they said about Camilla.
Well, I'm talking about the Conservatives. There's a poll out today that has them in the 40s.
Well, yeah, but that's the polls down in the States were no different.
Yeah. Okay. You think it's still a close race?
I think mainstream media.
Media.
When you're bought, there's going to be one side, right?
Okay. Don't trust the media. Fair enough. We're doing our best. I'm doing my best anyway. Me and David are doing our best around here. Okay. I thank you though for your call.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
The Conservative Party once had a big lead in the polls. It doesn't anymore, and there are less than 2 weeks to go until Election Day. No matter your political leanings, we want to know what happened to the big Conservative lead. Where are they trailing in most of the polls? Sandy out in Calgary. Hi, Sandy. You're on the air, Sandy.
Hi, Rob. I think
Hi,
a lot of it comes down to human nature. Like, people are afraid. So it's more like the devil right? because
Okay.
Trump's making a mess of Canada.
Right.
So I think that's where a lot of it's coming from is the devil you know, but they're not thinking. It's, yeah, we'll deal with Trump for the next 4 years, but what happens after that? So I think that's a big, big thing that they're just voting Liberal because, okay, they're getting along. Carney seems to know what he's doing. Poilievre is being so confrontational that's just a fight looking for somewhere to happen.
Okay.
So I think that's a lot of what people are seeing.
Okay. You think Poilievre's, you call it confrontational, that style has turned off a lot of voters?
I think so, because Trump loves a fight. And so
Right.
he's like, come on, bring it on, right?
Okay. Okay.
So Poilievre wants to fight. Carney wants to negotiate. I think right there is what's doing the big difference. People
That's
are
the big
afraid
difference.
what's going to happen if we fight back.
Kind of the style of the two leaders, perhaps?
Yes, very much.
Okay. Very interesting. Thank you, Sandy. Yep. Good to hear from you. Let's go to Kitchener. Susan in Kitchener up next. Susan,
how are
you? What do you think happened to the big Conservative Party lead in the polls?
Well, I would have to disagree with your previous caller because Dougie is as confrontational as they come.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
He shoots off his mouth without thinking, just like Trump did, right?
Okay. Okay.
I think Doug is a red person in a blue suit.
Red person in a blue suit. Okay.
I'm a 40-plus conservative year conservative voter. I did not vote in the last provincial election because I could not stand voting for Doug Ford. So as far as the loss in the polls, I believe it because I think what happened was you had a lot of moderate Liberals that were so sick of Trudeau that they were looking at the Conservatives as an alternative. So when Carney came in and literally stole the playbook to be a hero, he did indeed, like your other person said, took the wind out of the sails. That said, he is going to do exactly what Trudeau did if he gets in. I had coffee yesterday with a friend who's spending a few years working in the UK. She's a dual citizen. She is not a conservative, and she said, I'm really afraid of what will happen if Carney gets in. They still talk in England about the damage he did when he was head of the bank. So we step back and go, oh, Carney's diplomatic and he's this and this. If he made a mess as the head of a bank, what is he going to do as the leader of a country?
Okay.
So I think you have, and again, look at the NDP.
Yeah.
I think they're voting Liberal. When they are encouraged to vote Liberal, they were in the last provincial election. The NDP were actually encouraged to vote Liberal. The Green were encouraged to vote for somebody else here in Waterloo region. It was, they're just playing politics. And I think Canadians have very short memories.
Short memories. But you think, just to interpret your remarks, you think that a lot of this has to do with strategic voting, like anyone but Poilievre kind of thing?
Absolutely. And,
absolutely. Okay.
My friend who's in the UK for 3 years, she's Canadian. She said, what do they think he's going to change that they couldn't have changed in the last 8 years? They're not going to make it any different. She said, I would like to see Pierre given a chance. And she is not a conservative person, but she's been in England for a year and a half. She has relatives over there. So she knows what Carney did when he was over there. I think he's hoodwinking people.
Okay.
And I think there's a reason that Trump would rather deal with a liberal government than a conservative government.
What's that reason? What would that reason be?
Because I think that he knows conservatives will put up a fight.
Okay.
And he's a fighter. Why do you think that he seems to get along with Doug? They're both fighters. And so, I don't know if the conservatives will win. If the liberals do get in, we're in trouble. We're in real trouble as a country.
All right. Thank you for your call.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
More of your calls ahead on Talkback. What happened to the big conservative lead? Someone explain it to us. We don't care what way you lean politically. We just want to know, what are your thoughts? What happened to a 25-point lead? Where did that go? Why did it go there? 1-833-668-2577. What happened to the big conservative lead in the polls? Where did that go? 1-833-668-2577. What happened to it? Peter in Calgary. Thanks, Peter, for calling. You're on the air. What are your thoughts, Peter?
Yes, good afternoon. If you look south during the U.S. elections, after elections were over, the pollsters were going, how did we get this so wrong? I'll tell you why. Because for myself, I've had several calls from pollsters asking my opinion, and my opinion is they don't need to know. And I think there's a lot of people that have that opinion, and they're just not telling them which way they're voting.
Okay, so you think the conservatives, like Trump, are underpolling?
Very much so.
That the true conservative support is not being reflected in the polls.
That is correct, and that's why you're starting to see a little bit more of a surge on some of the polls for the conservatives.
Right. Do you believe those polls?
It's getting closer. And again, looking at the states, what happened there. After Trump won, they're going, how did we get this so wrong? And looking at the rallies that are happening with Pierre versus Carney versus the orange one that I won't bother naming.
Okay, all right.
That tells you who's getting polled.
Okay.
The conservatives are not.
Well, what were the polls saying? What were the
polls
polls saying about who was getting polled when the conservatives were ahead by 25 points?
Basically, everyone was doing. They were ahead, and then, of course, the moment Carney got in, everything switched.
Yeah. Okay.
Instantly,
do you think
overnight.
do you think the conservatives are still ahead by 25 points?
Probably. What's your ratio between Pierre's group that he pulls in versus Carney's group?
What do you mean?
How many people come to the rallies of Pierre versus those who come to the rallies of Carney?
That's a good question. Are rallies indicative of what turnout will be?
It will be.
It will be? And what makes you think that?
Unless the election is stolen, which is also a possibility.
How is that a possibility?
I don't really want to go there, but okay.
Okay. All right.
Because
are they going to steal the election?
The last election story that I had is that from one of the returning officers, when they went right at the end before the time of shutting off, there's a busload of people came in.
Yeah.
They were basically ushered straight through without really having ID check.
Yeah. Sure, Peter. Okay,
And
I
when
think
they
you
went
need to go adjust
to
your
count-
tinfoil hat. I'm going to move along, Peter. Thank you. Stop the steal. I'm not interested in that kind of stuff. Let's go to Andre in Kitchener. Hello, Andre.
Good afternoon, Rob.
Yeah. Hi, Andre. What do you think happened to the big lead that the conservatives had?
I just think that Poilievre is still himself. Strong, who he is. And I see more the other side of things happening pretty quick. But like the caller before, like I think with Susan, I agree a lot with her. What she said about Carney. The thing is that I voted federal years ago, and 9 years of life, it has been reckless. Seeing everybody suffering from it. So, it seems like you said, Canadians have a short memory. I can't forget that because I'm one of those, Rob, where 10 years ago, I could have bought a house with one paycheck, right? $25 an hour was $1,100 mortgage, you know what I mean? Have a good life, save some money. And now you need two people with $25 to get in that boat. So it's nonsense. And I think that, Rob, my reason is a lot of people are scared of change. They're scared to flip the other side. They're scared of their pension. I think that Poilievre should be talking more about not just his experience, but about himself as a Canadian, and to make other people like me comfortable of what's happening.
Okay, you want change? Yeah, it's called change versus scary change, Andre, and you're on to stuff. People are, generally speaking, open to change, especially after 9 years of one government. What they don't want is change that scares the pants off them. Has Poilievre scared the pants off a lot of people? I don't know. You can be the judge of that yourself. That's 1 hour down, very busy one. Right back with more of your calls. Hour number 2 after the latest breaking news. And we do have a lot of news to get you caught up on today.
It's time to talk back.
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
We have been asking, welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback, by the way, where we have been asking, the Conservative Party once had a 25-point lead in the polls, but it doesn't anymore. It trails in most of the polls. No matter your political leanings, we just want to know, why do you think that is the case? 1-833-668-2577. Rory in Wilmot. Hello, Rory.
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
I'm good, Rory. Good to hear from you. What do you think happened
thank
here?
you. You too. Well, first off, Rob, just let me say I've probably heard the most Canadian thing today, eh? Like, I can't make the debate who's going to become prime minister because the game's on, eh?
The hockey game is on now. I got to watch the Habs try and make the playoffs, of course. Yeah.
I'm telling you, like, what is the consortium thinking? They're supposed to be media experts. Like, did they not know that the French language debate would be a conflict with the Habs? I mean, what planet do they live on? For goodness sake.
Right. I will note, just by way of accuracy's sake, if Columbus loses tonight, it doesn't matter and the Habs are in. But if Columbus wins, then it's nail-biting time for Habs fans. Okay.
Maybe they would have. Maybe they are better off watching the debate. We'll soon find out. I think Poilievre, to his own credit and his own detriment, I mean, he eliminated his competition before the election was even called, and that was Justin Trudeau. In fact, Poilievre had me convinced that Justin Trudeau had to go. And so, I think a lot of Liberals probably felt that way. And, you had a lot of New Democrats that certainly take a look at what's happening with Singh and the way that he attached himself to Trudeau. But now that Trudeau, decided he was going to leave, and myself personally, I was kind of shocked that he stepped down. I didn't think he was going to do it, and maybe Conservatives didn't either. And now that you've got Mark Carney, you have Liberals that are saying, "Hey, we got Mark Carney. Trudeau's gone." And you've got new Democrats looking at their situation right now, and let's be honest. I mean, Poilievre is still in the race, and I think the Democrats are probably looking at their options and saying, "I can vote Liberal now because Trudeau's out of the way." And so, the ultimate poll is the poll on voting day. So I sometimes take polls with a grain of salt, but I'm not surprised that the gap has narrowed because enemy number one for Poilievre stepped out before it was even time.
Now,
to get
I would say rolling. I would just dispute something that you said, that the Conservatives were calling for Trudeau to go. That is not accurate. The Conservatives wanted to run against Trudeau.
Oh,
the
absolutely.
The Conservatives didn't want Mr. Trudeau to go anywhere. The Conservatives in their line of attack for months and months and months on end was call an election. Agreed. They wanted to be the ones to run against the most unpopular politician in the country, Justin Trudeau.
100%, Rob. But the problem is they did it too soon. I'm not arguing that they wanted Trudeau to go in an election. Absolutely. Problem is that they did such an effective job of doing it that he had to bow out early. And so to me, that's a byproduct of, I think, the success of what Poilievre and the Conservatives were able to do in opposition, that it forced Trudeau to leave early instead of duking it out at the polls.
Okay, let's strategize this just a little bit further while I have you on the line. Do you think it was the Conservatives that chased Mr. Trudeau away, and because they did such a great job at damaging him in the public's eyes, getting the Liberal Party down to 16%, or did Mr. Trudeau do himself in? Because I've always wondered this: was Mr. Trudeau going to leave, or was Mr. Trudeau only going to leave when the whole Chrystia Freeland thing blew up in his face? Did he honestly think that Chrystia Freeland was going to read that fall economic update and just carry on like that and be replaced by Mark Carney as finance minister and lead the Liberals into the next election with Mark Carney as finance minister? Or was that all game planned out in advance? I don't know.
I don't think he did himself any favor, surely, Rob. No question about that. But, one thing I think I'm willing to say, traditionally as a Liberal, is that I was convinced Trudeau had to go. And I think Mr. Poilievre, day in and day out, had his sights on Trudeau and stuck to the prize. And, I think probably the best of both worlds kind of collided a bit too early. And now I think Mr. Poilievre is faced with the situation where, he doesn't have the boogeyman in the closet.
They lost the boogeyman. Okay. They lost their boogeyman. Okay. Very interesting, Rory. Thank you. Very good take. Wayne in Cochrane. Hi, Wayne.
Hi there, Rob.
Hi, Wayne. Rob, what do you think happened?
I'm just looking at these polls, and I think as I reflect back on my university statistics course, I think as you get closer to 100% of a population that would be agreeing on something, that your confidence interval goes up, and so the validity of that poll would be there would be a greater confidence in the validity of that poll. We've got a poll right now that's almost 44%, and I think 39% is close to where
you're pretty close there. Yep.
So the thing that we're not hearing from pretty well everybody, and I know that each poll will have its own margin of error, but on an average, like nobody's ever saying, I'm quoting this poll and the margin of error is plus or minus this many percent, right? So if the margin of error was out on the top end for the Conservatives and on the bottom end for the Liberals, my guess is that these polls are pretty close.
Okay.
And so I'm sort of gobsmacked at how everybody seems to be now putting so much emphasis on these polls, which I think there's a greater degree of inaccuracy with respect to these polls because there's a lot of variables, since the advent of online, social media, that kind of stuff. I think there's a greater chance for missing a lot of opinion. Younger people are not answering their phones, and so I'm not going to be surprised, to tell you the truth, if we see something happen like what happened in the U.S., especially given the size of some of these rallies that the Conservatives have been enjoying. I think there's a disconnect there, and I think
could be a disconnect. Okay, all right. Thank you. You're very optimistic. Thank you, Wayne. I'm a little tight on time, Wayne. No, I'm tight on time. I got to go. I'm over time, as a matter of fact. So we've got to jump here. Thank you, though, for your call. Jeff in Brooks, Alberta. Jeff. Hi there, Jeff. Hello, Jeff. Are you with me?
My call and letting me speak my point of view.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I think it was early February after he quit and shut down Parliament there. He took off for Paris there and spoke at an artificial intelligence. I just struggled with that. He couldn't deal with reality back at home. But when he returned, does anybody remember what he did? I think he handed out $80 billion for a 1,000-kilometer rail line, high-speed rail line between Quebec and Toronto. Is that correct?
They're moving ahead with that project, apparently. Yeah, high-speed rail.
And within 7 days, we saw the Conservative lead lose 20 points. Now, just help me. Does 70% of the population live in Ontario and Quebec? Because I remember a week later, Global Television running around interviewing people at subway stations, and they were so relieved. They needed this high-speed railway line between Quebec and Toronto for 30 years, right? And shovels are in the ground. You can't turn back now, right? So if 70% of the population just got what they wanted or highly needed,
right?
I just, are you kidding me, right? That the election's over before it even began. I had a guy on social media from Ontario last night. He says, those who you are in Alberta are going to kneel to because of that high-speed rail line, right? So
well, I don't know. Well, you and I don't know how old you are, but I'm on the back nine and I can see the clubhouse now. I don't know if I'll ever see that train in my lifetime, sir. And they have been promising that. I mean, that is like an evergreen promise from government. High-speed rail.
Okay, but I mean, we're asking the question of what changed, right?
What changed? Okay, you think that? Okay,
I think the announcement of an $80 billion railway line drastically swung the
really?
votes,
okay,
right?
all right, that's interesting. I hadn't given that much thought, to be honest with you. Jeff, thank you. In Brooks to Jordan in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Hello, Jordan. You're on the air. What do you think happened? Hi.
I don't know what I can't understand the polls because I've never been polled in any of them when the Conservatives were up 25 points, or I've never been polled. I don't know anybody that's been polled, but yet here in Nova Scotia, our government is PC. We just won supermajority or whatever. Yeah. And then when I see on the federal map, it shows us that we're going to all just go and vote Liberal.
Vote for the Liberals.
I don't understand where they get that analogy. I don't trust the polls one bit.
Okay.
And I don't see the same thing in Ontario. Doug Ford, is he not a PC government?
Well, yeah. He's supposed to be.
He might not be. But
he's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, but the government in power is PC.
It's PC. Yeah. Just won a third straight majority government.
Yeah, so why? That's provincial. I understand that, but they're going to not want PC in federal. I don't understand how. I don't know who they're polling from. I can't quite understand it. I don't believe them. I believe that the PCs are going to show up on voting day, and that'll be the end of the discussion.
Okay, fair enough, sir. Fair enough. Thank you.
Awesome.
For your call. We will stop here. There you go. 3 lines available again. We're plowing through them today. Have your say, and we'll move along to the next caller as we ask what happened to the big Conservative lead in the polls. 25 points at one point. Gone in a matter of months. So I don't care what end of the political spectrum you call home. No matter your political leanings, we just want to know, what do you think happened? That big Conservative lead. 1-833-668-2577. It's News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're talking about the Conservative Party, what's been going on during the campaign. It once had a big lead. It doesn't anymore. Trails in almost all of the polls. Just want to know, why do you think that is the case? Let me bring you up to date on a few notable items that have happened today. We were reporting about a Japanese news report from Nikkei, large financial news outlet in Japan, and a report that said it's considering moving production from Canada and Mexico to the United States, and most notably saying on the block could be assembling the CRV, the popular SUV Honda CRV, which they do in Alliston, Ontario, big assembly plant in Alliston, Ontario. 4,200 people work there. So Honda Canada issued a statement about this, saying it's keeping its full production in Alliston. Quote, for the foreseeable future. Quote, we can confirm that our Canadian manufacturing facility in Alliston will operate at full capacity for the foreseeable future. No changes are being considered at this time. We constantly study options for future contingency planning and utilize short-term production shift strategies when required to mitigate negative impacts on our business. That was the statement from Honda Canada today. So good news for the workers in Alliston, Ontario. Now, meantime, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt asked about possible tariff relief for the auto sector by a news reporter in the White House press briefing. I believe it's Katie Simpson of CBC News. Let's listen to this.
I'm wondering what that looks like. Is it tariff relief on the 25% tariffs that are in place right now, or the new tariffs that are coming up in May on auto parts? And a second on Canada, if I may. President Trump's tone when it comes to Canada-U.S. relations, Canadians have noticed it's shifted a bit in the past few weeks. Ever since the election campaign started, he stopped talking about Canada becoming the 51st state, at least publicly. I'm wondering if that's on purpose and why.
I would reject the president's position on Canada has shifted. Perhaps he just hasn't been asked about Canada by questions from this group in the Oval Office, but they see him almost every day. But the president still maintains his position on Canada. The United States has been subsidizing Canada's national defense, and he believes that Canadians would benefit greatly from becoming the 51st state of the United States of America.
Right. So that's back. Okay. Let's go to Emerson in Calgary. Hi, Emerson. Hello, Emerson.
Hi, good afternoon, Rob. I just want to say thanks for being a class act, as you always are, your whole staff, David, everybody.
Oh, thank you.
I just want to say, my mom is 98 years old. She's been a staunch liberal all her life. So last night we did a conference call with me and my 6 brothers, and we said, Mom, I know you've been a staunch liberal all your life. You're 98. God bless you. Be honest. What do you think we should do? And you know what she said? I know in my heart the Conservatives need to win to save this country. Not for me because I'm on my way out, but for the young people, my grandchildren. She said, I'm voting Conservative. She said, I hope God gives it. Her birthday's on the 28th of April, same day as the election. I said, Mom, I said, you've always been writing a winner when it comes to federal politics. And then I asked her, why would Ford tell us that Poilievre is tanking? And she said, he's got a hidden agenda. He's worried about those land deals, and he wants the Liberals to win to bail him out if something goes sideways. I said, well, guess what, Mom? I feel it's going to be a Conservative government. Now, I have to be honest, Rob. I don't think it'll be a majority, but I do think he'll pull off a minority government. People will see what he's capable of, and then next time around, he'll blow them out of the water. I really think it's not going to be a Liberal government. No, those polls were taken when he was at his peak, this Carney. Something fresh just came out of the oven, but people are too smart. When the Conservative base fires themselves up on election day, look out. It's going to be a pleasant surprise, but I have to be realistic. I don't think it'll be a majority, but I do think it'll be a slim minority, and then let's just hope the Bloc can come to their senses and keep them in power for a while. Thank you. God bless you. You're an
interesting.
amazing guy. We
Same
love
to you. Thank you so much, Emerson, and happy birthday to Emerson's mom in a couple of weeks from now. Joe in Kitchener. Hello, Joe.
Hey, how are you, Rob?
I'm good, Joe. Good to hear from you. What do you think is going on here?
I think Pierre Poilievre, he really wanted to go, and he definitely would have. Since Carney came in, he stole his thunder. He cut the carbon tax, and that's pretty much all Poilievre had. Now what does he have? Just slogans, and he can't even use after tax because that's gone.
Okay. What about other issues beyond, say, the carbon tax? Or do you think it was just kind of he was all wrapped up in the carbon tax, and then when the carbon tax was gone, he was out of ammunition?
Was a referendum on the carbon tax this election, was it not? That was his whole thing going in. And then Carney took it from him.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think he can win. I mean, he doesn't have what it takes to lead.
Who Poilievre can't win, doesn't have what it takes to lead? Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Do you think the Liberals have just run a better campaign? Is that the case?
No, I think it's a combination of factors. I don't think they've outdone them in any particular category. It just doesn't seem like Pierre has what it takes.
Okay, what about Trump and tariffs and 51st state and all of this stuff? What role do you think that played in it all?
51st state, never going to happen. We're never going to be that. It's not what we are. Trump is definitely playing a factor in it. It's definitely turned out positive for the Liberals. I do think Carney is better suited to handle that.
Okay. Well, so do a lot of Canadians, apparently, especially older Canadians. For some reason, there's a generational divide there, that's for sure. Okay, but you think axing the tax, and once Carney axed the tax, that was a deflating.
That took the wind out of Pierre's sails,
that was a deflating
sure.
moment. Yeah, fair comment. Okay, thank you. On top of everything, you have the Ontario Premier Doug Ford weighing into the election campaign. Let's listen to some of those comments. This was the Premier of Ontario at the Ontario Legislature yesterday. Yesterday was the first day back for the Ontario Legislature. They elected a speaker today. They had the throne speech. Doug Ford called for a snap election and won a third straight majority victory. And he was asked about the federal campaign, and this is what he had to say.
As for Corey, I've said right from day one, he's tough as nails, but he's the best campaign manager in the country. And to be very frank, if Corey was running that campaign, I don't think Mr. Poilievre would be in the position he's in right now. But it's still a lot of time left. And we still have debates. At the end of the day, the people will decide which way they want this country to move forward. But sometimes the truth hurts.
Sometimes the truth hurts. Doug Ford, 3-time winner of majority government in Ontario, coming to the defense of his campaign manager who helped make that happen, Corey Teneycke. And I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. Corey Teneycke, very powerful person in the conservative movement in Canada. Met him a few times over the years. Had him on radio shows way back when. Even met for lunch once, many years ago, to talk about Sun News. Maybe you remember Sun News. He helped get that up and running. Saskatchewan guy, former reformer, worked in the Prime Minister's office of Stephen Harper, has a firm called Rubicon Strategy. Another partner in that firm is a guy named David Hurley, who was a big-time Liberal player and pollster back in the Paul Martin days. Big Paul Martin guy, also from Saskatchewan. They're on the podcast Curse of Politics together, very popular. But it's a government relations firm, Rubicon, lobby firm. And look, Teneycke has been using that podcast platform, speaking with many media outlets, basically spilling the beans on how he thinks the Conservative campaign is blowing it and heading for certain defeat. And he says it's all because the election campaign has been framed around Trump and standing up to Trump and defending Canada. And he thinks the Poilievre campaign is just too Trumpy. And he defends that view because he says he just ran an election campaign in the biggest province in Canada with 40% of the Canadian population and the most important province in terms of seats in the election campaign. So he thinks he has special insights into what works and what doesn't work. And he thinks the Poilievre campaign's been driven into the ditch because it was slow to recognize that the Trump issue would be the defining issue of the campaign. And the refusal for the Poilievre campaign to recognize that, he has called that in the news media campaign malpractice. And that's why a campaign that was up by 25 points is now behind. And in some cases down by double digits in Ontario. And he says they blew it and they deserve to lose. Jim in Alberta. Thanks for calling, Jim. You're up next on Talkback. Hi there.
Hi there. How are you doing?
Good, Jim. What do you think's going on here?
This is really interesting because if you want to know Mark Carney's platform a year ago, you just look at Poilievre's platform. People suggest, he stole some things. The biggest one was axe the tax. And I'm not dead set against some kind of carbon tax, but it was a second GST. It was inflationary, and we got a solution for that. We'll just raise interest rates. I mean, just crazy. Anyway, a lot of the difference in the voting right now, or the polls right now, has to do with the NDP, and I think that it's pretty hard to go from sort of farther left and vote for the right. So I think that they're losing a real lot of voters to the NDP who are now going to the Liberals.
Yeah.
Sort of a partial success left-hand story. But, we're all supposed to decide, who's going to be the next prime minister. And as far as I'm concerned, Donald Trump has already decided who he wants, and that's Mark Carney. Mark Carney, if his lips are moving, he's lying. And he was known in England as the unreliable boyfriend because everything he said, he turned around and did the opposite. So, you can look into that. I'm sure you have, but a lot of the others haven't. But also, I'm pretty sure that Elon Musk is actually the president of the United States. He bought it. He owns it. He's the president.
I don't know about that.
Donald Trump is the puppet.
Right.
That's all I got.
Okay.
Thanks.
That's all you got? Okay. Well, we'll wrap it up there then and stop right here, take a couple of more calls. Kyle, you hang on the line. John, as well, we'll get to you, and then we'll shut her down for another Talkback here on a Tuesday. I'm Rob Snow. Now you know on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
What happened to the once commanding lead that the Conservatives enjoyed? Why do you think that no longer exists? Kyle in Listowel. Hello, Kyle.
I guess I'm the only one that's been polled so far out of all.
Oh, you've been polled. Okay.
Like.
All right. Okay.
And I think the reason why the polling numbers are kind of weird or whatever people say is I think the main reason is when I saw the number come into my phone, it said spam. But I always answer the phone because I'm a small business owner. So, I'm not going to go and just not answer a phone if I think it's a customer calling. And then it was a polling, and it took maybe 5 minutes just to figure out, who I'm voting for, where I'm from, and so on. But, I could see a majority of people are not going to answer the phone call. And maybe I think I heard a couple of weeks ago, a caller said that, people are busy with work or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's more, I would say maybe it's the retired people more than those people that are working, and those people are more likely to vote for Liberals versus the Conservatives and stuff. So you might be seeing a little bit of a higher maybe number in terms of that. But that's where I would say the polling could be a little bit different. But yeah, like I said, the number that came in was spam. I think Pierre Poilievre is doing the best he can right now for the circumstances of which is Carney, basically taking everything that he says and then turning it into his own platform. But we'll have to see, like I've said before, the real number, and a couple of callers have also said the real numbers come in when the voting is done. But I really hope that tomorrow they don't have the French debate because I have a very important game to watch, and I'll be watching that over the debate. So,
okay,
Rob. Have a good one,
we'll
my
see.
friend.
All depends on Columbus. Maybe a lot of Habs fans might be watching Columbus, Philadelphia tonight and cheering for Philadelphia. And depending on the outcome of that game, that could decide maybe if this French debate even goes ahead tomorrow. Who knows? We already have two political parties saying maybe we might want to hold off a little bit on having that French debate tomorrow. The Habs aren't in the playoffs yet. Let's go to John in Calgary. Hi, John.
Hi, Rob. Great show as always.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. My pleasure. What do you think is going on?
When I look, we had two unpopular politicians, Trudeau and Poilievre. Now one of them is gone. Now one of them is unpopular. I'm a conservative by nature, but I find Poilievre quite dislikable. And I think there's two other reasons why they are going to lose to a landslide to the Liberal Party. One is I think Carney is possibly unknown, but doesn't come with the baggage. But he's clearly an intelligent man. So that's number one.
All right.
I've got to be careful saying the word liberal out here in Calgary. I might get hurt. And I think the second is, it was brought up by somebody at the top of your show earlier. We cannot have a bullheaded approach to the US. And this is a vote, an election on a singular topic of how do we manage and reimagine the relationship. If we are bullish, we will end up like China, no doubt at all, and that will frighten investors and manufacturers. And although we heard from Honda today that they're not moving in the near future, all the political words, if we are not seen as reliable and consistent, and Polyev would not be, then we're going to question their continued presence in this market, given the irrational actions of Trump. So, for those three reasons being, Polyev is disliked.
Yeah.
Carney's an intelligent man, and frankly, the Liberal Party have a better strategy to deal with the US. For those three reasons, it's going to be a landslide for Liberals. Unfortunately,
landslide for the Liberals. Okay. Thank you, and thank you to everyone who called today. I really, really enjoyed the discussion and getting all those viewpoints on today. We'll do it again tomorrow. Brand new topic, more of your calls. The latest breaking news is coming up next on another very busy news day. This is News Radio.